Hi. Hello, it is Becky here from the Beckisphere, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to continue with our climate book club, which we do every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Pacific Standard Time. For those of you who have not been here before, the weird voice in the corner is my mom because she doesn't want to be on screen. And I need to put my face on the screen. Hi, sorry. Mom is looking at me terrified. Just, casually putting my book or my computer under the GRE book that my brother uses so that I can look better. That's what they're for, right? Okay. So hi, welcome here. Oh my gosh, there's 3 people here. What? Hi, people. Please go ahead and just say hi in the comments because I would love to see who is here. Today we are going to talk about chapters 17 through 20 of the Don't Even Think About It, how our brains are wired to ignore climate change. And in those following chapters, we're going to talk more. Oh, hi, Randy. Hi. Thank you for coming. And he's one of my old coworkers.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So we're going to continue talking about this book and why it's difficult for people to be able to process climate change and talk about it and enough for us to fully act on it, because we can't act on things that we don't know about. So the first chapter that we're going to talk about on this next section is called, let me go straight to it. Here we go. Good start. Okay. It's called Don't Even Talk About It, which is very appropriate. The Invisible Force Field of Climate Silence. And that's why I named this more recent, this video, The Climate Silence, because it seemed appropriate. I don't know. So basically what it's talking about in this first chapter of the section is just that we really don't talk about it. It seems like whenever someone brings it up, and I've experienced this a lot, whenever someone brings it up, it's just immediately, it's like faux pas, like, oh, you went there. You went there. Let's talk about the quiche. Let's not talk about it. Let me know if you've experienced the same thing. Because I try to talk about it in my daily life. I try to talk about it every single day. And it's just something that people are like, oh, okay, let's find any other conversation to talk about. It's just super uncomfortable for people. So that was kind of what the first chapter was talking about. What's funny is that in this book, and keep in mind this book is from 2014, so things have changed. But he said, when pressed, 2/3 of people admit that they rarely or never talk about it, even inside a closed circle of their friends and family members. Women talk about it far less than men do. As a group, younger women talk about it less than anyone, especially, as I will explain later, those with children, which I found hilarious because I felt targeted. Well, I don't have children. I have a cat. But I was like, but no. To be honest, I completely disagree with that, because going through the major of environmental science, the majority of people that were taking environmental science were women. Same with the marine bio facility, same with Envision, which was an environmental magazine. Majority of people on the staff were female. So
maybe he's talking about millennials or one generation up.
Maybe, because it was a while ago. So, but even then, I don't know. It seems like, and we're going to, one of the books that is on the list to read, and maybe that is the next book we should read. I didn't even bring it with me on the options, was the Climate Solutions, the women's book, All We Can Save. That was an option. So, okay, real quick disclaimer. Okay, this book, awesome. We want to get through it because it's taking a long time for us to read if we're going by every like 4 chapters or so. So we want to go ahead and get through it. And we have a list of other books. We have a pile of other books that, yeah, that 2 of them are up in my thing. Yeah. Mom's going to go grab them. The assistant is getting them. But we have a list of other books that we want to cover because a lot of people have talked about the issue of climate change and also the issue of communicating climate change. So that's one of the things that, we want to read as much as we can about. And this is just one of many books that are on this topic. So Mom and I have loved reading this book, but we are ready to move on to the next book. So we're going to try to move a little faster.
Where's that anyway?
The other one I think is downstairs on the counter. So we have a list of books, and Randy, because you're here, and as well as other mystery person, I think it's not me. I still get confused on the count, but we have a list of other books that we would like to read for the next one. So the first one is called Climate Courage and How Tackling Climate Change Can Build Community, Transform the Economy, and Bridge the Political Divide in America. Seems awfully, relevant. I think so. That might be the winner. We'll see. And Facing Climate Emergency, How to Transform Yourself with Climate Truth. So that's another one. And then the last one that we can't, is it up there?
Yeah.
Oh, you put it back there. The other one, which I go get, is this one right here. And it's called All We Can Save, Truth, Courage, and Solutions for the Climate Crisis. And this one's interesting because it is basically a bunch of stories and essays and poems by all women. So it's women of the climate movement because even though the climate movement has a lot of women in it, we tend to not be as common at the table, as vocal at the table as some other people that are talking about it. So those are the 3 books that we're considering. Yeah. And so let us know in either the discussion or the comments below which one of them sounds the most interesting to you. And that will be the next book that we will read. Yay. Pushing the option on other people. No. Okay, but back to this book. Thank you for joining me on the interlude. But back to this book. So bottom line, apparently I'm not the main demographic that talks about climate change, which I completely disagree with. And if it's also not true. Oh, hi, Rahul. The book options are All We Can Save, Truth, Courage, and Solutions for the Climate Crisis, which is women completely did this book on essays and poems and all that kind of stuff. Facing the Climate Emergency. I'm just going to put this in the comments below. But Facing the Climate Emergency, How to Transform Yourself in the Climate Truth. That's another option. And Climate Courage. How Tackling Climate Change Can Build Community, Transform the Economy, and Bridge the Political Divide in America. So let me know in the discussion or comments below which one you find to be the most interesting to go ahead and talk about. And this is also the most people that have commented already. Randy, Rahul, I love you guys. Okay, so let me go ahead and keep going because I keep getting distracted. Yes. Okay. So bottom line, apparently we were not the demographic 6 years ago, but honestly now we are women, millennials. Okay. Next thing.
It's just silence is the big issue, right?
Yeah, the main issue is just that we don't talk about it at all. And whenever we do talk about it, there's always the immediate, why are you bringing this up? Why are you depressing me randomly during the day? Like, why do we need to pay attention to this? So what was interesting is that there's 3 main points. There's 3 main versions of not talking about it, which is on page 85. First one is ignorance, which is just plain not knowing about it. Second one is denial, which is refusal to know about it. And the third one is disavowal, which is the active choice not to notice. And I honestly think that is the biggest one. The third one, I feel like, is the biggest one, either that or ignorance, because very few people deny it. We've talked about that in previous discussion sections, that only 7% of the US population actually denies that climate change is a thing. Maybe even less, because that was according to a 2014 book. And so that's a really small percentage, but it seems really big because, to be honest, a lot of people are actually in the ignorance of not knowing about it and not understanding that it is such a big problem, or disavowal, where it's an active choice not to notice it's a problem. And again, I think that last one is the biggest one because it's a stressful problem. And in our day-to-day lives, the last thing we want to think about is that the world is going to end, So it's literally the last thing we can think about. But at the same time, obviously, it's an extremely important thing to think about because it's something that we need to act on. And it's becoming more and more of an issue that we are seeing in the present day. So we need to act on it more. So one of the things that he talks about is that a lot of main organizations that are usually very humanitarian and focus on a lot of other human issues don't talk about climate change, which is really interesting. And he doesn't really explain why that is, to be honest. Did you get an understanding of why?
Yeah, they just wanted to focus on what their specific issue was. They didn't want to bring in a whole bunch of other stuff. They wanted to keep the focus on what their specific issue is. I think that's changed. I think this book is, 6 years old, and now we hear a lot about justice and climate. People of color are being disproportionately affected by dirty air, dirty water, bad climate change that's happening.
So. Yeah. So that's another thing that's probably hopefully changed. Yeah, that's the interesting thing about reading a book that's in 2014 about climate change, is that really in this topic, so much has changed. And so this book is relevant to a lot of things, but not necessarily to how we see it currently.
Yeah, Biden has made climate change one of the 3 or 4 things that he will focus on.
Yeah. One of his most recent website that he recently just put up, which is I think it's called the Biden-Harris transition.
Okay.
I think it's called, because it's transitioning from one presidential administration to the other. And there's 3 main things that he talks about. One is COVID, one is healthcare, and the other one is climate change.
Oh.
Those are the top 3 issues. And so obviously it's changed because we definitely would not have seen that in 2014. In fact, one of the things that he talks about in this is how little Obama mentioned it and talked about it, which I remember that. Like, I remember him not bringing it up much, which is interesting because now when people bring it up nowadays, they're like, oh, he's done all these different things. And I'm like, really? He did? Because he didn't talk about any of that. Maybe he did them in the sidelines because he knew he couldn't talk about it. So, interesting. Okay, so so that was one of the parts that was also talked about in this first chapter, that he talks about Obama a bit more in chapter 87. Page 87. Sorry, not chapter 87. And then in chapter 88, what's interesting is he kind of exemplifies, honestly, how people are really not able to talk about climate change by literally like cutting it out. And it was such a weird little section because that was the only time he did that, and he didn't even do it in quotes.
Question mark?
I know. Mom was like,
what is this? I'm so confused.
But this is what honestly some parts look like. This is what the science community under the Trump administration looks like.
Yeah, the websites and everything.
The websites are gone. Like, climate change is not talked about at all. Like, at all. And so it's, how are we supposed to address the issue if we don't talk about the issue. Seems a little paradoxical to me. But anyways, that was kind of funny how he went ahead and blurred things out, which is exactly what it looks like in certain documents. It's like, no, we can't talk about climate change. We can't talk about climate change. Yeah, right, Rahul? People that understand the issue, it's not surprising that they do that, unfortunately. But and a little funny bit was the main author dude, Marshall. He says the C word, indeed, which it was called the C word instead of climate change. In the year that the biggest selling music hit landed at the Grammys, the rapper C Lowe's bouncy ditty "Fuck You" climate change could only be referenced as the C word, which I found hilarious. If you guys know that one, it's also "Forget You." It was originally "Fuck You." Anyways, so that was a funny little ditty. And then another thing he says, though, is that the people that did feel compelled to talk about it were the late night talk show hosts.
Interesting.
And yeah, that's fascinating because it really shows that late night talk show hosts, like the humor is able to bring out things that are normally more faux pas to talk about in the sun than it is to talk about it like late at night for talk show hosts. So that's where basically the conversation of climate change really resided, was just in passing, like a little like, by the way, this is happening, And I see that a lot nowadays. For example, I was watching a video today, and it was on this guy reacting to Taylor Swift, which none of us are surprised about. But he's like, yeah, in 30 years, we're still going to be, did he say 30 years? I think he said 300 years. Yeah, he's like, in 300 years, people are still going to be bopping to the same song. And then he's like, well, maybe not because of climate change. 20-year-old saying that. And I literally commented below. I was like, thank you for just bringing up climate change. Legit, thank you for bringing it up. Because even in those little like backhanded little like comments and stuff, at least people are thinking about it. Like, that's how low standards environmentalists are still, is we're like, you talked about it. Thank you. If we were still doing that with things like, I don't know, things like hunger or something like that, if we only talked about it in a little backhanded comment, that's just crazy. That's just crazy to me. But yeah, so that was my little analogy. Anyways, I feel like I'm going all over the place. I'm sorry. So the second chapter that we're reading is chapter 18, which is on page 91, and it's called The Nonperfect Nonstorm: Why We Think That Climate Change is Impossibly Difficult. And he had interviewed a bunch of people who literally were talking about how climate change was just the impossible problem. And that's, I feel like, another version of how people just kind of slide it off. Is they're like, oh man, it's such a perfect problem. Psychology, we don't know what to do about it. Move on, And he actually kind of explained on how he finds that it's not the perfect problem. Like there are points in which we can figure it out. It's not like it's the problem that literally our human psychology cannot handle. That's not the case. And we need to stop framing it like it's the impossible problem, because, like, who wants to solve the impossible problem except for people who are really asking for it? So that was the main point that I got from that chapter. Oh, he also called it a wicked problem. He said it was a wicked problem. And that honestly was the major part of that chapter. And then the next chapter, which is chapter 19, is called Cockroach Tours: How Museums Struggle to Tell the Climate Story. And this is interesting because, honestly, it relates a lot to how I am with my climate channel, having trouble discussing it in a way where I quote here, the narrative of the Hall of Human Origins promotes that millions plus people who visit every year is that climate has always changed, that we have always coped with these challenges, and adapting to them is what's made us strong and smart, which kind of discredits it.
Mm-hmm.
The
makes
whole
it a non-issue.
It makes it a non-issue. The argument that climate has always changed, for those who ever come across that problem and don't know how to answer that, the answer is climate is changing faster than it has ever changed before. We always walk, yes, but if someone is sprinting and runs into you, that's different. Things are happening so fast that other organisms, the rest of the world, can't adapt. That's the difference between climate changing, how it's changed before, how it always changes, because it's still changing how it always changes. Like, there's always that baseline that will continue to change.
Mm-hmm.
But the main difference is that we are doing it at a speed in which other organisms, the rest of the world,
and us
cannot keep up at all. So that is the main rebuttal to that argument, is that we are doing it in a way, it is a train that you cannot jump on. It is not a stationary train. It's not even a slow moving train. It's really fast. And we can't jump on when it's that fast if we don't have any mechanisms of changing that. Mm-hmm. So there's an argument for your tool belt. And another thing that he says, which also equates to both museums and certain YouTube channels, is he says that you can achieve an innocuization of curiosity that might trigger people to get more interested, but you have to find techniques that are interesting, startling, and fun to get the message out. And that goes back to a previous discussion section that I had, which really talked about how it's a hard issue to talk about, because all in one breath, you need to be informative, you need to be factual, you need to be engaging, you need to be interesting, you need to be personally applicable, but also like applicable to everyone's own individual things. Like, you need to be applicable to one person, but also a bunch of people. Randy says we need better storytelling for climate issues that digest and personalizes the science. Yes, exactly. And something that I've said before is that it seems to be an issue of whether or not to cater to the factual side of the climate science issue or the emotional side of the climate science issue, because everybody, for my everybody responds to complicated issues and are able to understand and personalize complicated issues in different ways. Some people, it's more emotionally driven. They're feeling more of an emotional connection to the issue, and so they're able to act on it. And for other people, it's more of a factual base. Oh, there's all these truths. Okay, now I understand that this is something I need to act on. And for climate communicators, it needs to be both, because otherwise you're going to not reach a large audience on the other side. So it's a difficult thing to do. And there's already masters and PhDs. Well, I don't know if there's PhDs, but there's already masters and certificates talking specifically about climate change communication, because it is such a complicated issue. Consideration for me for grad school, for sure, because it is a very complicated issue. But I don't even know if they really know the perfect formula. I don't know if the perfect formula exists to be able to talk about it.
But storytelling, I think, is a big one, because it plays to people's emotions, helps them relate to it.
Yeah. I feel like there needs to be more stories relating to people in the Midwest. Because on the West Coast, we have wildfires. On the East Coast, we have hurricanes. And I feel like those two topics, they're covered a lot. But in the Midwest, there's flooding, there's drought, there's agricultural industries that are suffering right now. And I feel like that stuff is not talked about as much. I could be wrong. Send me links, please prove me wrong. But that is something that I've noticed, is that there's a definite disconnect, especially when it relates to the middle part of the US. So I don't know. That's just what I've noticed. Anyways, okay. So that's basically the main part. Rahul says, seems like the climate scientists get backlashes from big oil companies. In the book, he talks about Shell blocking the Science Museum.
I was going to mention that too. That's exactly it.
Thank you for having the book and reading it. Yeah, Mom, do you want to take that?
Well, it was just that Shell Oil paid money to do the exhibit, and therefore the exhibit ended up kind of like what they wanted it to end up like, which was very neutral and not at all really about climate change.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up, because that is another super important part of that chapter, is that the big oil companies, and I've done this in a previous video, so definitely check it out if you haven't. Big oil companies kind of have an error of acting like they're the ones that are leading the charge in moving us towards climate solutions and stuff, by doing things like putting a lot of money into things that are climate educators, like in the museums and stuff. But they have a really good way of kind of just making it a non-issue by making it, oh, the climate is always changing. Oh, things are working on it. Oh, it's an individual's problem. So therefore, consumers are the ones that are responsible, and they're the ones that need to act on it. And if everything goes to hell, it's because the consumers were the ones that were not acting on it fast enough. And that has resulted in a lot of non-action and a lot of non-education about the issue. Yeah. Are there any other main parts of the book and chapters that you have found to be interesting? Please let me know. To continue the video, just to keep it going, I'm going to start on chapter 20. But if you type things in the comments, even if it's just things that I have talked about, if you haven't read the book, for the other people that are watching, then please go ahead and write in the discussion, because I would love to pause what I'm talking about and have a discussion with you all on what you think is the best way to communicate climate change. Yeah. So chapter 20 is Tell Me a Story. Why lies can be so appealing. Mom, what are the main things that you found interesting in this?
Just that I think this is exactly what Randy was talking about before.
Yeah.
The emotional brain makes sense of the information collected by the rational brain. That's a quote from this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that is exactly what this is all about, is that stories are really, really, really important. Here's another quote. People will maintain their belief in an engaging story, even if they're told later that it is a fiction. So stories are clearly critical.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what this is about. A compelling story, simplicity, brevity, credibility, comprehension, consistency, repetition.
Yeah.
Is what it's about. You identify the victims, you basically then put it together as a story. Yeah. And that's what that one is about.
Yeah. Randy says, yes, stories connect with people's lived experiences. Yeah. So my question for the people watching, for Randy and Rahul and the other people that have not named themselves, do you think that the media, the reporters and journalists, do you think that they are doing a good enough job telling these stories? What are some organizations that you think are doing a good job? What are some that you haven't heard anything about climate change about? And what can we do that's better? Me as a journalist, I want to know how best I can talk with other people about these issues and connect it in a way where things change, where it's important. Rahul says repetition is key.
Mm-hmm.
That is another thing, absolutely. And that's something that I am trying to show in this channel is I am repeating myself a lot, but it's important because people need to hear it over and over again for it to sink in. Yeah. The only way you can internalize things is if it's repetitive, it seems. Well, not only way, but it's one of the ways.
I'll tell you, one of the media organizations I like is NPR's
Reprogramming.
Commonwealth Club, which does Climate One.
Yeah.
And Climate One is really a good show.
Climate One.
Yeah.
Our recommendation is Climate One on NPR. That one is really good because it talks from many different perspectives and for many different experts on how best to address those issues. And so it comes at it from many different fronts, which I think you really need to do. Yeah. And as Rahul says, reprogramming. Yeah, people need to be reprogrammed in a way where people understand that is a big issue and they feel compelled in their daily lives to talk about it and act about it. We need to kind of move away from it being a faux pas issue.
Big time.
It needs to not be a faux pas issue. It needs to be something people talk about every day, every stinking day. Even if it's something super casual. And that's something that I stress to my viewers is in your daily lives, there's always a way to bring this up.
Did we talk about you in Bryce Canyon with the horse guy?
No. Okay.
Okay. So funny.
Randy says Democracy Now! Addresses issues of inequality in regards to climate issues, not their primary focus though.
But I do like Democracy Now! They're very good.
Yeah, they do a really good job with it. I think the only issue is that they're very partisan seeming, I think. Do people find them very partisan?
I find them just kind of saying it straight as it is.
I personally need to watch them more. Mom is read them more.
It's a podcast, yeah.
Listen to them more. See, I don't even know. There's too many things to watch. Okay, so I am going to take your suggestion, Randy, and I'm going to listen to that more and see.
A great one.
Yeah, and learn more from it. What Mom was addressing
in Bryce Canyon.
So we were on horseback and we were riding through Bryce Canyon with the usual guide that's out front, right? And I don't know how I started talking about it.
I don't know. Like right behind him.
And I was right behind him, like the horse right behind him. And somehow, the way Becky does, I started talking about climate change and how it's a big issue. And this poor sucker was not expecting me to bring up climate change during a horseback riding trail, and so here I am, I'm asking questions. One of the main things that I do is I ask questions like, okay, so what are you what makes you hesitant to talk about the issue? What makes you uncertain about the issue? I ask them point blank where they're at. Why is this a struggle for you to go further than where you're currently at? And I just, that poor guy.
The rest of us kind of hung back.
The rest of my family kind of hung back as I didn't berate the guy because I don't like doing that.
Lots of questions.
It's in conversation. It's literally just in conversation. Rahul says it's always the right time and right place to talk about climate change.
Yes.
Even
on a horseback ride.
Even on a horseback ride in the middle of Utah. Absolutely the perfect time to talk about it. I don't know what else. But yeah, no, literally, I talk about it every single day because every topic has a connection to climate change.
Yeah.
And that's something I do want to show more in my videos as I continue to go on. I want to talk more about each individual issue. If you're getting coffee in the morning, by the way, climate change is impacting the coffee industry. because of climate changing in those areas, the locations where coffee beans grow have been impacted by that changing climate. And now our coffee that we are expecting and needing for our caffeination every morning is now in jeopardy.
And we had a lot of climate refugees coming from Central America.
Randy says, no! Yeah, seriously. No, coffee is at risk. This is serious.
Climate refugees.
And climate refugees. That's another thing, is that if we're talking about immigration, there are already climate refugees. People that have lost their houses in California to wildfires and have moved to other locations. Those are climate refugees.
Or lost their coffee farms.
In Central America. Those are climate refugees. Yeah. Like, they're already a thing. So that's another part. All of Louisiana will be a climate refugee.
Too many hurricanes.
Too many hurricanes and flooding and sea level rise. Majority of Louisiana is literally on sea level. And so...
Is New Orleans going to be like Venice?
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
New York is pretty Venice-y.
Yeah.
They have a whole built out part for the overpopulation. They have built out onto the peninsula.
Oh, interesting.
In different areas. So there's already that kind of thing. Venice is just special because it was like one of the first places that showed people doing that. But
yeah, but
people still do that.
It's got the barriers now, the walls or something that come up when it floods, so that it can stave off the water.
We've always, all of us have been like, rip Venice, but it's stuck around for longer already than we've expected.
Yeah.
Okay. And with that, that's literally all I have. Is there anything else that people want to discuss before we get into it? Remember that we have our 3 books to choose from. I don't have enough hands. So here's the books. Boom. Please let me know in the discussion or the comments below which of these 3 books we should read next.
So we're going to buzz through the
Thank you, Randy.
We're going to buzz through the next half of this book and be done.
Yes, we're going to buzz through the rest of this book. Mom and I are going to try to just yeet through the rest of it next week, I guess.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes. But yeah. Okay. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me. Keep the conversation going in the comments below. And I will see you on Monday, where we are going to talk about what the Biden-Harris administration can do with and without the Electoral College
without the Senate.
Senate. Why do I keep saying Electoral College? I don't know.
Because they're a big deal right now.
Yeah, they're a big deal. They're in my mind. Okay, we are going to talk about the Biden-Harris administration, what they are able to do with and without the Senate having to do with climate change. So that is going to be the topic for Monday. Thank you so much for coming and talking with me. And yeah, check me out on Monday. I'll see you then. Bye.